always natural disasters that we have to fear or at least be prepared for in our world. But one that many people seem to ignore for certain reasons is that of volcanoes. Whether you realize it or not, volcanoes are scattered throughout the world and sometimes are hidden in plain sight. Some people think that once they've erupted, they pose no more threat. But that's not how it works. Some can stay dormant for hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years before erupting again. Thus, we are almost always in danger of one randomly going off. So allow us to show you the volcanoes that could erupt soon. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 10, Mount Vesuvius. You might find it odd that we're starting off by talking about one of the most infamous volcanoes ever, but you'll see why by the end. The infamous volcano that is known as Vesuvius is one that helped define the history of the dangers of volcanoes. Because when it erupted in 79 CE, it quite literally buried two cities underneath its fire, magma, and ash. In fact, much of Pompeii is still buried in some aspects because of how completely buried it was. So much so that it was rediscovered by accident. Now your thoughts might be going now to, why is it on the list now? Isn't the danger over? Sadly, no. While it's true that some volcanoes have the ability to erupt and then go dormant, as it's called, not all do that. And Vesuvius is indeed one that could explode at any time and cause devastation once again. In fact, over the course of its history, it has erupted no fewer than 8 times, with the last one being in 1944. Because of the ever-present threat of Mount Vesuvius, the Italian government has made plans in the chance that another major eruption happens. That shows how seriously they take this threat. Number 9, Mount Rainier. In the United States of America, there are many volcanoes that have many people's attention in terms of possibly erupting again. And in the state of Washington, Mount Rainier stands tall above most of the other contenders. There are many reasons it is considered dangerous, but one of the biggest is that, like many volcanoes, it's near very populated centers of life. In this case, it is near Seattle and Tacoma. But not only is this a volcano, it's also a mountain with high elevation, which means there is snow on it. So should things go bad, the heat from the lava, which moves slowly, will melt the ice in the ground and create mudslides that can be just as devastating as the lava and ash that the mountain will spew out. Not to mention rock slides and the like. Now, scientists state that should Mount Rainier erupt, over 2 million people would be affected by it. And that is a big reason why it is monitored by the Global Volcanism Program and more. Because the last thing we need is to be caught off guard by it going off. Number 8, Mount Pinatubo. Heading to the Philippines within the archipelago of islands lies Mount Pinatubo. This is a volcano with a lot of history and a lot of recent history, because the last time it erupted was only 30 years ago, back in 1991. And when it did erupt, it was the second biggest eruption in the 20th century. Mount Pinatubo didn't have a history of eruptions, so it took a lot of people by surprise when it went off. Over 700 people lost their lives because of this eruption. The only good thing to come out of it was that a lake was made via a caldera that was formed after the eruption, and so in a way it made the area even more beautiful, but it also made it more populated. In the 62 miles surrounding the mountain, over 21 million people reside. Thus, another eruption could cause untold loss of life. Number 7, Popocatépetl. Another potentially very active volcano that is near populated areas is in the country of Mexico, where they have the second tallest mountain volcano in the continent via Popocatépetl. On both sides of the volcano, less than 50 miles away in each direction, are massive population centers, including Mexico City, which has 18 million people. Then there are also smaller cities like Puebla that have over 2 million citizens in them. In this case, it's not a question of if it'll erupt, but rather when it will erupt. Many are trying to calculate all of the damage that will be caused by an eruption from it. Not unlike Rainier, there are expected to be massive landslides, but also massive billows of volcanic ash that will decimate the surrounding areas. The last time it showed life was back in 2000, and before that it was in the 1920s, so it could go at any time. Number 6, Nova Rupta volcano. This particular volcano is found within Alaska's Katmai National Park and Preserve, and it was a volcano formed not centuries ago, but a little over 1 century ago. in 1912 in fact, and when it was born, it was the largest eruption of the 20th century. 30 cubic kilometers of ash was sent into the air, and it was literally raining ash in a massive around Alaska and Canada. What's more, this eruption wasn't a typical type of eruption for this kind of volcano, so you can see why people are hoping this one won't go off again. Number 5. Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens had the most destructive eruption in the history of the United States when it blew its lid back in 1980. 200 square miles of land was destroyed by the ensuing fire and lava. Thousands of animals were killed, along with 57 people. It's one that is a grim reminder of just how deadly and powerful they can be. Plus, Mount St. Helens isn't dormant in Montana, it is still very much active. Given how many people live around the mountain, they're hoping that should it erupt, they at least have time to evacuate. Number 4. Mount Agung. You might think that a volcano eruption can only last days, but you'd be wrong. They can actually last months, such as with the 1962 eruption of Mount Agung out in Indonesia. This was a volcanic eruption so long-lasting that the entire event took 11 months to happen in full. This near-year-long eruption went and pumped so much ash and smoke into the atmosphere that it cost over 1,000 people their lives by the end of it. And here is another twist for you. In 2017, it erupted again, and it teased another eruption in 2018. So who knows when it might come back for another encore. Number 3. Mount Fuji. Mount Fuji is one of the most famous landmarks in all of Japan, but it's also a mountain that is a volcano that has a very known trigger: earthquakes. You see, Mount Fuji hasn't erupted since 1707, and during that year there was an earthquake that set off a chain reaction in the mountain that caused a volcano. So since then, whenever there has been a major earthquake in Japan, people fear that Mount Fuji might blow. Such as when the 2014 9.0 earthquake hit Japan, everyone feared that it might blow up. Now, thankfully it didn't. However, the area is still ripe with earthquake activity, and should it go and erupt, over 25 million people would be at risk. Number 2. Yellowstone National Park. Yeah, it's true. If you didn't know, Yellowstone National Park is literally a super volcano. That's actually why it has a bunch of geysers, hot springs, and such other phenomenon. It's because the place is a massive volcano that is currently dormant. It has erupted 3 times in its history, but the last time was 640,000 years ago. That doesn't mean it can't erupt again. In fact, there are literally reports that come every single year that point to a Yellowstone National Park building up enough pressure to explode into a volcano. Now, obviously that hasn't happened yet, but it could one day, and because of the size of it and its location within the United States, should it happen? Well, let's just say the effects are too horrifying to mention in full. The lava, the ash, the billows of clouds that would block out the sun for untold periods of time, it could cause a lot of devastation, which is why so many are trying to make sure they have warning signs in case it happens. Number 1. Underwater volcanoes. Whether you realize it or not, there are about 50 volcanic eruptions every single year, but few of them actually do damage to society. The truth is that there are volcanoes forming all the time, and we cannot keep track of them all, nor can we predict when and where they'll all pop up. In 2018, a string of earthquakes led French scientists to find a new volcano 3 miles wide. Many volcanoes are underwater, and that's an area we haven't mapped out very well. Places like Hawaii were only made because of underwater volcanoes suddenly rising up and causing land masses to be formed. So what volcano might erupt next might just depend on where it's located in the world and whether the world itself wants them to blow. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the volcanoes of our world that may appear to be peaceful at first glance and yet are truly dangerous due to them being able to go off any point in time? Does this make you a bit more wary of how you think about volcanoes? Which ones do you personally feel have the potential to erupt soon if things don't go our way? Do you live near one of these places? Let us know in the comments below, be sure to subscribe, and we will see you next time on the channel.